Hello, everybody. I haven't uploaded a video in a while and I want to ramble on a little bit about it. I have made some recent videos with animations and I saw some challenges and I wanted to figure that out. And I have learned or read a lot of stuff that I hope will eventually improve my animation skills. And therefore, that was a part of what I did in that time. The reason for it, however, is that I think we are facing an economic and social collapse. So at the same time, I did this to gain some practical skills, some hand-on skills, and we really don't know the ramifications. I think some of us experience already right now that the cryptocurrency stuff is falling apart. So a lot of havens that people hoped to steer to in an event of crisis uh, don't seem feasible anymore. People have to kind of realize that we are in a situation together. And this is something I have been on since like 2015. A lot of people told me, you know what, if you want to speak freely, just whisper in your pillow. Of course, they did not say that, but there are the technological equivalents. Like if you use some crypto technology, you can hide your communication, or but that actually does not solve any problem, any of the outside world ramifications into your own life. Um, they have to be addressed. There are a lot of things going on, and if you just ignore them and think you can escape into your little chicken barn, there's this homesteading movement you may have noticed, or the prepper thing, the tins and cans will save you and your cat idea. There are a lot of spiritual approaches to it. Now is the time for Jesus, and that will solve everything. I don't discredit that in particular. That's actually maybe the most hopeful of all. I don't discourage anybody from praying. I also do it. I just think that you should do this in addition to trying to help solve the situation, to help improve the circumstances. And I feel like our ship has run into an iceberg, and there are not even enough attempts to kind of fill the lifeboats right now. That's how I feel about it. I see some of it, like there's a wind changing in our elites, and I have to explicitly praise them for it, because I think behind the backs of their base, behind the backs of Fridays for Future, behind the backs of the pacifists, and so on, a lot of stuff is going on that I actually approve of. Yes, still, for the most part, I am critical of all of it. I don't see how we will resolve the energy crisis if we don't engage in finding new oil grounds and digging for coal, using the reserves that we know we have and finding more reserves. At least until we have better technologies. And to charter for better technologies, we should not narrow our view to wind and solar, because we actually do need nuclear fission. We need thorium reactors. We need uranium reactors still. In going forward, we should be open to all kinds of technologies. And I think that the most technologies proposed on the green side are not feasible. There are actually intelligence channels like Have a Think, who present, one idea after the other of how to tackle climate change. That's their perspective, and most of them, I just think, are nuts. They are just as dangerous as nuclear reactors. They just throw all kind of chemicals together, heat it up until it can explode, and so on and so on. And this is then the alternative to a nuclear power station. So I'm not quite convinced that we are taking the challenges that we are facing seriously, and also I'm not convinced that we are even quantifying it correctly. I do not know, how much the climate will change, and in what direction it will change, and what can be done about it, and so on. But I'm very sure it's not going to stop in 12 years, or I don't know, Greta Thunberg gave us this 12 years timeline a couple of years ago. So I don't know when the last point of return has been crossed. In any event, I don't believe in any of this. I think actually we have a much different scale. We have much longer timeline to tackle the issues at hand. And yet those that are most pressing, like Putin could literally shut down our gas supply any moment, they are not quite taken seriously. And that is what worries me. So I am in agreement with some aspects of what's going on, yet for the most part I'm in disagreement. And I think there are a lot of people like myself who have no representation in the public sphere. Yet I don't actually know how I would, for example, become a representation in the public sphere, because I have been kicked out from all major platforms, basically. Or I can't log in on Twitter. I haven't even a proper explanation why I can't log in on Twitter. And I was banned on Facebook after one post, which was not an insulting post. I don't know what's going on. But I can't use those platforms. And I don't see many others talking in the same, sensible way that I do. When I started in 2015, I actually thought, I reach out my hand and I find people in America and in Australia and New Zealand and other places that have similar challenges, and suddenly we will find a common ground and have a movement against the erosion of our culture, of our Western civilization. And what I find instead now are more and more people who are not just comfortable with the West disintegrating at its core, as we see with the woke nonsense and the environmentalist hysteria, and there are multiple things, the crime rates shooting through the roof in major American cities as one symptom of it. These massive things, but there are some people who I thought shared the same concerns about the rotten core of Western society, and I was suddenly very calm about the fringes, the fringes of our civilization being run over by, yes, savages. And with savages, I actually mean the Russian elites. There was one intellectual, one American Russian Jewish intellectual who professed the word savage with regards to Russia, the country where she came from, and that was Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand came from Russia. She did not mean the Russian language, the cuisine, the food culture, the dressing, the clothes, whatever. She meant that at a point in history of her life, Russia was under Soviet control. And in that time period, the culture just did not profess a high status. It was destroying itself. Stalinism deliberately destroyed Russian culture. Deliberately destroyed everything that had to do with Russia. And now, for different reasons, Putin has also destroyed Russia. And keeps destroying Russia. There are people who say the sanctions just work on the Western countries, but not on Russia. That's a big mistake. Of course, they are also destroying Russia. It also crawls from the outside into the core, right? And I'm not happy about any of this. I just think that, people who say the Russian elites are in such a better position than we are and so on, they tend to be propagandists and people who are gullible to those propagandists. I don't believe it. I think that Putin is using all these minority ethnicities in his multicultural country, and he is throwing them under the bus in order to keep the core base at St. Petersburg and Moscow, the most dominant, most relevant cities in Moscow, stable. He stabilizes his regime by just keeping a stable core of the regime. But that doesn't mean that it's eroding. It's just the erosion is crawling in from the outside. And we have to learn from this that our own civilization is eroding also, not just at the core, but at the same time, the fringes are being run over. And as I've just said, savages do we still agree that there is such a thing as savagery? Because I also find that, very difficult that, the most obvious stuff is no longer admitted. Like, you have these people who are hyper cynical. I have been told my entire life that I was too cynical. I predicted everything from 2015 up to today, the economic collapse, the social collapse, and everything. That's why I make the videos that I make. And everybody told me that I was too cynical. Yet I believe that there are a lot of people who are too cynical, and if you're too cynical, you don't fight anything anymore. If you really believe that America is this excessively aggressive imperialist nation, have you ever compared it to anything else? Because, here in Germany, we had a government, the Walter Ulbricht government, that was toppled by the later government, Erich Honecker, by the latter marching with troops to the summer residence of the former, holding a gun at his head, and said, you know what, Moscow doesn't want you anymore, sign this paper and resign. That's how regimes change under Moscow control. Tell me that you believe France, Spain, and so on changes the government the same way. Do you really believe this? Do you really believe that, in Western nations, American occupied, whatever, that propaganda terminology is, do you really believe that the Americans have that tight grip on how governments should be constituted and so on? Do you really believe this? And what strikes me is the lack of judgment. If you cannot judge this, what else can you judge? I mean, there were people, and are still people today, I guess, in Germany, who said that the East is the better Germany. You could drive over the border and see how ugly everything was in the East. How can you look at pictures from East and West Germany and say that Moscow treats the people under its control better, good or better, than the Americans and the British and so on? How can you look at this and say the East is more democratic and allows people more self-control and self-governance than the West, looking at the pictures? Do you really believe this? And ever so often I ask this one question. This is the one question that just runs through my mind again and again and again. Do you really believe it? And likewise, do you really believe that the same people who totally failed to rally any audience into Hillary Clinton's election campaign in 2016 could stage rebellions in Ukraine, Belarus, and other countries in so-called color revolutions? The same people, the American establishment, that supposedly the almighty establishment that topples all these precious communist regimes. Do you think these same people who totally failed to rally Hillary Clinton's support in 2016 when there was no excuse for the coronavirus excuse, these people could stage an uprising in Ukraine in 2014, starting this war? Do you believe this? Thank you for listening, and think about it. Bye.